Everyone is asking, when is Kenya joining BRICS? They are looking for a signature, a handshake, a formal I do. But while the world was watching the front door, Nairobi just used the back entrance. We aren't a member yet, but we are officially something much more dangerous to the old status quo, a BRICS partner. In late 2025, the Kazan Protocol changed the rules of the game. The bloc realized it couldn't just keep adding members without breaking. So they created a partner system, an elite 13-nation club that benefits from the new development bank without the Western sanctions that come with full membership. It is the ultimate geopolitical balancing act. We are dating the East, while the West still thinks we are married to the dollar. In this file, we are opening the partner reality. I am showing you the specific projects, from the refineries we discussed in the previous file to the new grain exchange that are being funded outside the IMF's watch. This isn't just diplomacy. It is the blueprint for the decade of your wealth. This is the macro file. Most people are waiting for a big BRICS logo to appear on Kenyan government buildings, but the real move is much more subtle. As of 2026, Kenya's ambassador to Russia, Peter Mutuku Mudhuki, has confirmed that Nairobi is seriously evaluating its engagement with the bloc. However, the secret isn't about joining. It's about the Kazan Protocol, a 2024 agreement that created the partner country status. The government won't explicitly say it, but they have chosen a strategic autonomy model. This allows Kenya to be part of a 13-nation club alongside neighbors like Uganda and Nigeria that gains the benefit of the East while technically remaining a friend of the West to avoid secondary sanctions. While the IMF and World Bank often demand austerity, meaning higher taxes and budget cuts for Kenyans, the new development bank, that is NDB, often called the BRICS Bank, operates differently. In May 2026, the NDB held its 11th annual meeting in Moscow, focusing on development financing in an era of technological revolution. The NDB is specifically targeting $30 billion in approved financing by 2026, with 30% of that intended for local currency settlements. For the refineries and synergies we discussed in our previous file, this is where the real money will come from. By being a partner, Kenya can access these billions without the same political strings attached by Western lenders. The biggest piece of information the public hasn't fully grasped is de-dollarization through the back door. Even as a partner, Kenya can participate in the BRICS Cross-Border Payments Initiative, that is BCBPI. This initiative allows Kenya to settle trade directly in local currencies like the shilling against the yuan or rupee by bypassing the US dollar and the SWIFT network entirely. Every time the dollar strengthens, the price of fuel in Nairobi goes up. By settling trade in a basket of currencies, Kenya creates a silent shield for the shilling. This move is intended to reduce external vulnerability, meaning the next time a global crisis hits, your cost of living shouldn't be dictated solely by Washington, D.C. The government is playing a double game. It is maintaining the standard gauge railway in partnership with China, sourcing pharmaceuticals from India, and receiving energy or defense support from Russia, all while keeping the IMF happy on the surface. This is strategic hedging. We are not just a member waiting in line. We are a partner building a parallel economy. This isn't just about politics. It's about who controls the next decade of Kenyan wealth. For decades, the Kenyan shilling has been a hostage. If the US Federal Reserve raises interest rates in Washington, the price of bread in Nairobi goes up. Why? Because we have been forced to buy dollars just to buy the oil and grain we need. But as of 2026, the BRICS partner track has handed Kenya a backdoor to safety. The government won't call it de-dolarization yet. They call it strategic currency diversification. But the reality is a direct hit to the greenbacks monopoly. The most significant piece of information the government is keeping quiet about is Kenyan's integration into the BRICS Pay system to pay for Russian fertilizer or Chinese electronics. Kenyan banks had to send shillings to a correspondent bank in New York, convert them to dollars, and then send them to the final destination via the SWIFT network. Under the partner status, Kenya is testing mBridge and BRICS Pay. This allows a merchant in Nairobi to pay a supplier in Beijing or Moscow directly, shilling to yuan, in seconds, bypassing the US banking system entirely. By removing the middleman, that is the dollar, we reduce the transaction costs that are hidden in the price of everything you buy. Remember the New Development Bank, that is NDP, we discussed in chapter 1. Here is the relatable math. The NDP has committed to ensuring that 30% of its $30 billion in approved financing by 2026 is issued in local currencies. When we borrow in dollars to build a road and the shilling weakens, our debt doubles overnight. When we borrow in shillings or a basket of BRICS currencies, our debt remains stable. Kenya is currently negotiating a swap line with the NDP. This will allow our central bank to access billions in yuan or rupees to stabilize our energy imports without ever touching a US dollar. The government is currently part of a massive BRICS initiative to create a unified grain exchange. Currently, global grain prices are set on the Chicago Board of Trade in dollars. Kenya is positioning itself as the East African hub for a grain exchange that uses local currency pricing. This means your ungas and chapatis could soon be decoupled from the volatility of the Chicago markets. We are moving from food aid to food sovereignty through financial engineering. This isn't about hating the West. It is about survival. The partner status allows Kenya to build a parallel financial nervous system. If the US dollar crashes or sanctions are flying, Kenya's economy doesn't have to stop. We are building a shield so thick that the next global financial crisis might actually be an opportunity for us rather than a catastrophe. The government's current strategy is what analysts call strategic hedging. We are effectively trying to have it both ways. In early 2026, Kenya's ambassador to Russia, that is Peter Mutuku Mathuki, made it clear Kenya is signaling a strategic shift toward deeper engagement with BRICS to reduce our dependence on Western-dominated financial systems. But here is the truth they won't say out loud. Being a partner means we are in the waiting room of history. While nations like Nigeria and Uganda have already formalized this status, Kenya is still seriously evaluating how to align this cooperation with national priorities like technology transfer and sustainable growth. Most people don't realize that in a multipolar world, neutrality isn't free. The US and the EU are watching Nairobi closely. While some experts argue there won't be an immediate upheaval, there is a risk that money from the West may eventually require us to disconnect from trade with their geopolitical rivals. BRICS isn't a charity. Their partner model is designed to expand the bloc's reach while preserving a selective core. If Kenya stays in the waiting room too long without committing, we risk losing the high impact funding from the new development bank that our neighbors are already tapping into. Here is the relatable reality. For the first time in 60 years, Kenya is actually being treated as an independent global actor rather than a dependent periphery. Capital flows through Afreximbank are set to double in 2026 to $40 billion. This is money specifically intended for industrialization and stable financing that comes from within Africa and the BRICS partnership. Projects like the Dangote refinery expansion, aiming for 1.4 million barrels per day, are proof that the global south is building its own energy vise to protect its people from global price shocks. The government is playing a high-stake game of musical chairs. They are using the BRICS partner status to tell the West we have options and telling the East we are open. If we can master the Kazan Protocol, we gain access to the BRICS Pay system and the grain exchange without losing our existing trade links. This is radical economic independence in action. It is the end of the era where one city, that is Washington, London or Beijing, decides the fate of the Kenyan shilling. We are moving from a world of orders to a world of options. Whether this is a masterstroke depends on whether our leaders uses this partner status to build the Kenyan industry or simply to find a new person to borrow from. The files are open, the shift is real, and now you know exactly where the money is moving.